This is the lot of knives JT sent me to sharpen up for him. I wanted to show them off before I send them back and just give you guys kind of my thoughts on each knife and just talk cutlery. So this is the Benchmade 943. I showed this in a video earlier, and I'll bring you guys down here and show you all these edges before it's all said and done. But I sharpened this on the Hapstone system, which is very much like the Edge Pro Apex. The problem I ran into with this knife was the plunge grind. I'm not sure how well this will show up because I'm trying to do this a little backwards. So the plunge grind, hopefully you can see that shadow, intersects with the actual base of the cutting edge, which creates this flare. As you run this knife across the stone, coming this way or this way, the stone actually rides up and hits the plunge line here because it's so deep and they've left it so close to the cutting edge. And what you get when that happens is the stone actually starts to cut into the steel a little bit in the plunge area. And you can really see this problem on black coated knives like this, but honestly it happens in any knife. Myself personally, what I end up doing is I enhance the sharpening notch on most knives. The problem with the Benchmade 940 though, and the 943 as well, if you remove too much material going up, where the knife meets the stop pin can actually be affected and it won't sit inside the handle properly. So instead of going down when you enhance the sharpening notch, you have to go out. It's just something to be aware of if you've never messed with one of these. Definitely check some videos out. The Apostle P talks about it. Check his videos on the 940 and also his videos where he discusses the Edge Pro Apex, in particular when he discusses sharpening Wrangler Stars 940. Disregarding that little hiccup, it's basically just a 940. You got a black handle, you got that nasty powder coating, chalkboard, chalky kind of feel on the handle. It's got a blue back spacer instead of a purple. Looks like JT put a black deep carry pocket clip. Very cool. And he's got quite a little bit of use on this. You got some little scuff marks in the coating up here. You can see along the handle there's some usage. And I did spray this down with alcohol, so a lot of the oils and stuff that were in the handle have been removed. So every little hiccup stands out. I compare this quite often to the Benchmade large emissary. I think these knives have a ton in common. And when I purchased my large emissary, this one, I considered getting the 943. What sold me on it though was the emissary is of course assisted. I love automatic knives. I love assisted opening knives. So for me, the emissary is a better choice. That may not hold true for everybody, but it does for me. Next, we've got the Southern Grind case collaboration. This is the SG or the CG01. I did a little discussion on this knife in the sharpening video of it. There's no flat in the edge of this knife. It is 100% all belly. That may not appeal to many people. I actually like it. I think it's pretty cool. I like this insert that they have. Most knives, when you can reverse the pocket clip like this, it leaves holes where the screws can insert. What they've done is they've put this little tab in so that when you extract the knife from your pocket, your thumb actually grips onto that. It's a clever little design. It doesn't leave those empty holes that make the knife look incomplete. It's just a neat little touch they thought of. The pocket clip, of course, as I discussed in the other video, it is a two-hand operation. Although it is small, it is very, very tight. It's a chore to get it in and out of the pocket. Flipping action is excellent. When you disengage the lock, the knife automatically rides over the detent ball with no problems. As you put pressure on the lock bar and you hit the flipper, you don't get that stick like a ZT that prevents the knife from deploying. So just overall, excellent knife. The blade to handle ratio is a little funky, and that's usually due to a lanyard hole, just like on the Paramilitary 2 and 3. The same holds true for this Case Southern Grind collaboration. If they would eliminate that lanyard hole, this thing would be really, really good as far as blade to handle ratio goes. This was one JT sent to me that I can't do anything with. This thing is basically just a sharpened pry bar. He was going to use this as a project knife. I'm not sure what he had planned for it, but the blade is just, it's beyond the end of its life. The end of its life was probably 20 sharpenings ago. You see how little is left in that handle, and it is so thick. Like I said, it's just a sharpened pry bar at this point. Only thing I could suggest is possibly sending it off to someone who does blade replacements like K Knives. Although he's only concentrating on the Benchmade bug out, if you threw enough money his way, he may change his mind. You know, money always talks. Is it worth it though? You know, you gotta weigh those options too. This is a limited run M390 mini grip. I think JT may have dyed these scales himself. I am not 100% sure on that. I think this might have been one of those gray and blue M390 mini grips, and he just dyed it purple. Again, I'm not 100% sure on that. Whatever he did though, I really like this color. It's pretty sweet. Like most mini grips, I mean, there's not much to it. I do like the fact it's not that plastic handle and it's more of a G10 material. It seems like they did a pretty good heat treat on it, because as I sharpened it on an Arkansas stone, the stone basically just ignored the steel altogether. Usually on an Arkansas stone I can get some kind of cutting as long as I put enough pressure down, but this knife and that stone did not bond together very well at all. This carbon fiber knife is a Doug Ritter mini grip. It's got a purple liner, and man, this is probably the best stone wash of any knife I have ever seen. Quite possibly I've seen a Microtech that would come close, but I think this even beats it. If they only did all of them this way. I didn't think I would like the Doug Ritter mini grip. I've seen so many pictures of them where the choil area is real messed up, they've got nasty recurves, and this knife experienced that problem as well. But I was able to enhance the choil and get past that recurve really easily. The knife is very thin behind the edge. So was this M390. Made it very easy to sharpen. Makes it a real nice cutter. Seems like it's got a decent heat treat as well. Just overall, it's a great little mini grip to have. If you've got one, consider yourself lucky, because I don't think Benchmade makes these any longer. I think Hogue has now taken over the Doug Ritter manufacturing. Got a Spyderco Domino. I always held off on purchasing this knife because I heard that those thin washers that are inside it can get crushed extremely easily, creating a crunchy deployment. This problem is what the Mantra suffered from, which led them to redesign that knife and the redesign, they just goofed it all to hell and back. It's not a very good knife from what I understand. The Southern has this same washer problem, as well as I think there's one other knife running around out there. I can't think of it off the top of my head. You guys would probably know better than I. The knife is in XHP steel. Like all Spyderco frame locks from what I've seen, lockup is almost at 100%. Spyderco just, they don't do frame locks very well, in my opinion. Spydercos and frame locks just don't mix well. I like the flipping action. I really like the look of this blue carbon fiber. It's real pretty. The stonewash on the titanium side it's decent. It's nothing to jump up and down about. I don't like how late the lockup is, and I really don't like the fact that these washers are supposedly so thin that they can be crushed, resulting in crunchy deployment. I always wanted a Domino, but I held off. Apparently they've discontinued this model now. I heard that the later models that were produced had better washers and were redesigned a little bit. I still don't want to take the chance though. As much as I would like one, I will not be purchasing one. Finally, we have a Sage 5. This is the compression lock Sage. I've got a titanium, I believe it's the Sage 2. Measuring behind the edge thickness on both of these knives, they measured 0.017. That's for a factory knife. That is very thin behind the edge. I sharpened this and the Domino at the same angle. You can definitely tell that this one is much thinner than the Domino, as the bevels are just so much wider on the Domino. I sharpened this on the Hapstone as well as the Domino because getting in this plunge area is a real pain in the butt freehand. I can actually see a recurve on this knife where the plunge line and the edge intersect. Realistically, this knife needs a sharpening notch. It doesn't need to be sharpened to the base like I've done. It needs a sharpening notch. No amount of sharpening in that base is going to fix where that plunge line intersects with the edge. It's going to be a problem in future sharpenings. You could probably get away with, I don't know, 7 or 8 sharpenings and have no problems, but it's going to eventually rear its head and you're going to have a nasty recurve, and it's going to be a pain in the ass to get out. This one is in S30V, like most of the Sage series. And just like most compression locks, it pinches my fingers sometimes when I open and close it. It's the reason I don't carry the PM2. That would be the reason I'd never carry the Sage 5. I like the carbon fiber, although it feels more like G10. I think it's carbon fiber. I might even be mistaken on that. You guys can correct me in the comments, but it feels like G10. I'm gonna bring you guys down now. We'll take a look at these edges and wrap this up. So we'll start with the case Southern grind. I freehanded this edge. Again, we've got a sharpening choil and a plunge line that are intersecting. Hopefully you can see this reflection of light right in here. And you can see where that plunge stops. It's right about there, right at the tip of the edge. So what that causes is a little bit of a flare. You can see a little bit of a smile. And if you continue to sharpen that without addressing it, eventually you will get a recurve. And what do I mean by you'll eventually get a recurve? Well, this knife demonstrates that pretty well. You see how thin it is right here? Let me get a pointer. You see how thin it is right in here? It's because that area is being missed by the stone. The stone is grinding back here and over here and skipping this middle section. And eventually that will actually start to create a very large recurve Right now, as I said, it's not too bad. You can get away with probably 5 or 6 more sharpenings and never experience a problem. But eventually, that's going to need to be addressed. And my solution would be to put a sharpening notch in. This side is where you can really see. My lighting will work with us. You can see where that plunge line actually starts and stops. It actually stops right about here. So right in here, it starts to thicken up until it reaches the back portion of the blade. Again, I'm not sure how well it's going to show up for you guys. I can see it very clearly by the naked eye. So this knife I sharpened on the hapstone. Took a fantastic edge. It's got a real nice reflectivity to it. And I also sharpened the Domino on the hapstone. Now both of these were sharpened at the same angle. And you can see the difference in the bevel sizes. The Domino is much thicker behind the edge than the Sage. They're both sharpened at 16 degrees. XHP here takes an amazing polish. This stuff just gets bright whether you want it to or not. It gets so pretty. Hopefully you guys can see that. And man, it's sharp. It's wanting to stick into my skin right here. See it cut. This thing is just ridiculous. Hopefully JT won't chop his finger off using it. This is the Ritter grip. I discussed this in the video earlier, but look at that stonewash. Benchmade, this is how you want to stonewash all of your knives. This is spectacular. I've never been a big stonewash fan. I mean, I like it, don't get me wrong, but I'd never buy a knife based on the fact that it was a stonewash. This would actually change my mind. I would totally buy a knife based on this stonewash. Now I showed this one off in the sharpening video. It's got a nice reflectivity as well. The bevel is just so doggone small, it's hard to see. This is the M390 limited edition. I think JT dyed these handles himself. They are a deep purple. Then he's got the blue liners with the blue barrel spacers. Fantastic knife. This one took a nice edge just like the Ritter grip. Both are 0.018 behind the edge. So they are extremely small at bevels too. So measuring both the Ritter grip and this M390 mini grip, they're reading approximately 18 degrees on the bevel. So I measured this and the Ritter grip on my edge protractor. Both came out to about 18 degrees. And you can see how large those bevels are. They're very small. And that is because they are so thin behind the edge. I'll show you this Ritter grip one more time. This is an excellent selection of knives JT sent my way. There's nothing in this pile I wouldn't want in my own collection, with the exception of that Frankenstein knife. Like I said, it's basically just a sharp pry bar. Those serrations are so over. So you got the sharpened bevel, then stock thickness. There's no transition. It's from right here to right behind the edge is almost the same amount of thickness, almost the same amount of steel. The only thing you can do for this really is replace the blade. You might be able to find someone who could regrind this and do something with it, but I can't do it by stone. The edge has some nicks and chips in it, but there's really no sense in putting a sharp knife or putting a sharp edge back on it. Well, I got all of JT's knives sharpened up. I get asked this question quite often. How much do I charge to sharpen a knife? I don't charge to sharpen knives. If you would like me to sharpen a knife for you, the only stipulation I throw out there is that I will not be held liable for any damage. If they get lost in the mail, if I slap them against a sharpening stone, if the edge cracks, anything like that, I will not be held liable for. Knock on wood, I've never had a single knife have a problem. But I do throw that stipulation out because I am dealing with abrasives here. If I slip with one of these knives and scratch it up or something catastrophic happens, I'm not going to pay for it. So if you would like to contact me and have me sharpen one of your knives, just be aware of that stipulation. You pay the shipping to me and pay for the shipping back, and that's it. I'll sharpen it up and get it out to you within a day or two, just depending on how busy I am. Guys, I appreciate you watching. If y'all have any questions or comments, as always, leave them below. Y'all have a good one.